And welcome back, everybody, to the very first ever Scarlet and Violet tournament in the Wide League, sponsored by Community Gaming, Poppy Cantan, Dark Aura VGC, and Elite Pokebox. I am here with Eric. My name is the Dodd. Sorry, I forgot to introduce myself first, but I am joined here by Eric. Eric, you were casting in those last couple of rounds. A lot of fun stuff we've seen tonight, or today.
Yeah, and the fun keeps on going because we've got a fantastic top 16 match for you guys. We've got Joe UX9 taking on ScarletSkill, a real battle between two of North America's strongest players here. Joe, of course, regional champion, multiple international worlds top cut. Dylan, or ScarletSkill, my bad, 2018. Virginia regional champion, multiple time, I'm pretty sure, world's competitor as well. So very, very strong talent we've got here. They're just getting set up into the rounds now. So we should be in for a good match. We saw both of these players on stream yesterday.
Yeah.
And,
Scarlet was rocking that electric Rotom, of course, being completely immune with that Levitate, a really, really powerful force. Nasty Plot, of course, can let off some mean Thunderbolts. But we saw a lot from Joe UX9 yesterday. I think Kingabit and Scarellage were some good parts of that team, if I remember correctly. But there was a lot of fun stuff. This should be a really good match. I'm excited to see how Scarlet can adjust to this team. And I'm excited to see what Joe uses to bring in, especially to deal with that Rotom having 0 immunities and all that good stuff. So hopefully we will be starting here in just a second. But yeah, I think, didn't you get to cast some of Joe UX9's matches last night? What was your favorite part of his team?
I have. I know his team in particular he's been a very big fan of the Skeledirge. Skeledirge is a quite the annoying Pokemon to deal with in this format, also sporting the Unaware ability, has access to Slack Off, so it's very bulky, can stick around for a long time and start racking up those Torch Songs. But I think some of the big MVPs are definitely the Kingambit and the Sylveon here. But we're going to see the Talonflame and Gallade lead off for Scarlet, as Joe will lead off with that Grimmsnarl and Sylveon.
Yeah, interesting leads here. Glade obviously getting some prominence here in this meta that it hasn't gotten before. Talonflame, obviously a great tailwind setter. Grimmsnarl, a fantastic support Pokemon. And Sylveon, that Hyper Voice, being a very offensive pressure in this meta right now. It's interesting to see this lead go up here, but a really good matchup, especially for Sylveon on that Glade, being able to really put some damage out there with that Hyper Voice, especially if it gets that Throat Spray boost off. Of course, don't know necessarily who's going first. Looks like we're going to get a Terastallization right out of the gate here, and that's going to go into the Talonflame. A lot of interesting choices you can go with there, but just Terra Flying, making sure that it is losing that Fire-type weaknesses that it may or may not have there. And going into a Brave Bird, so a Terra boosted Brave Bird just right off the bat here, going into Sylveon is enough to take it out. So Sylveon goes down on Joe UX9's side, making this a 4-3 match here right out of the gate. Of course, a little bit of recoil damage coming in there. Reflect going to come up for the Grimmsnarl, give it a little more bulk on Joe's side here, as we see the Psycho Cut coming out of Glade will not affect this Dark-type Pokemon. Very, very interesting turn 1 here.
Yeah, so immediately Talonflame going on the offensive there rather than trying to set up a Tailwind or what you normally see from Talonflame on turn 1. Of course, I'm expecting he was doubling up into that Sylveon, so that Psycho Cut was definitely meant for the Sylveon, but not hitting into Grimmsnarl there. Funny interaction there, that Gale Wings Brave Bird, of course, going before the Prankster Lights, or Prankster Reflect, so not being able to take advantage of that this turn 1. But here comes another Brave Bird.
Big Brave Bird. It's going to go into the Scarellage, and it's going to take that like a champ. A little bit of recoil damage coming off onto there. And then we see Glade getting Scarellage into a critical position there. Just a little bit of health left on it. Of course, now we see, looks like a Leftovers boost, or Citrus Berry activating for that Scarellage. Torch Song is going to go off, giving it a little bit more of a special attack buff, as well as taking care of this Talonflame. Which could be critical here for these next couple of moves. Terastallization no longer an option for Scarlet. Yet to see that come out for Joe's side just yet. But we see the Spirit Break coming off of Grimmsnarl into that Glade. It will take it all the way out with that Fairy-type stab. And the crit helping just a little bit more. Don't know necessarily if it needed it, but it is there. And Joe able to clear the Scarlet side of the field.
Yeah, we're seeing just Pokemon going down left and right. Lots of critical hits flying. Now Gallade going down to that Spirit Break, and Talonflame finally going down. We see King Gambit, and unfortunately Joe decided to transition a little too fast there, so we don't know exactly the last... Oh, so it was Gengar. Okay, so... Yeah, so if we got King Gambit and Gengar going up against the Skeledirge. Skeledirge, you know, if it decides to Terrastalize, it can take damage from this King Gambit a little bit more safely. Doesn't have to fear something like Sucker Punch. I believe the common Terra type on the Skeledirges now are Fairy type, so that would be an extra resistance to Sucker Punch. It has taken a lot of damage already, and King Gambit is a very strong Pokemon. Gengar has the ability to go on the offensive, also doing some supportive stuff here, so we'll have to see what exactly the Gengar is deciding to go for. Could go for a Sludge Bomb to try to do some damage to the Grimmsnarl, could just take out the Skeledirge immediately with the Shadow Ball, and King Gambit can do a lot of damage, but here comes Sucker Punch, and that's a KO on the Skeledirge.
Right off the bat, Skeledirge goes down to a critical Sucker Punch coming off of that Kingambit. And we see Goblin Mode throwing up a light screen there, making sure that special attacks are no longer nearly as effective. Shadow Ball is going to fire off this Gengar into that Grimmsnarl, but Grimmsnarl takes it like a champ as it's not very effective. Looks like we have the last thing in the back for Joe is going to be that Garchomp. Definitely a very offensive force in this meta, and it could be a key here to help turning this around. Definitely has an advantage over that Kingambit, but we'll see how now.
Yeah, Garchomp. Interestingly, Joe still has the ability to Terrastalize. So if this Garchomp is holding something like the Terra Ground, it can do massive damage here to King Gambit and potentially get that little extra damage it needs to get that KO. Gengar most likely carrying a Focus Sash, so it might need a little extra help to get that KO. Grimmsnarl already has both of its screens up, I'm pretty sure, by this point, so it can easily go on the offensive with a Spirit Break to try and clean up that KO. And interestingly, we saw Shadow Ball last time. Usually, like, Gengar has the ability to not go for both moves, but, you know, potentially could be packing Sludge Bomb, but we'll just have to see on this turn as Garchomp is indeed going to Terrastalize into it. It looks like Terra Water.
Wow, interesting pick here. The Land Shark becomes a Sea Shark as we see Joe Terrastalize into that Water type here. Shadow Ball is going to fire off the Gengar. Looks like it's going towards the Garchomp. Garchomp able to take that pretty well here with well over 50% of its health. Earthquake's going to fire off, and it's going to put both Pokemon into a critical position here. Gengar down to its Sash. Kingambit about 25% of its health left. And of course, now it's Kingambit's turn with the Kowdo Cleave going into the Garchomp. It'll take a little bit of rough skin damage, and Garchomp takes that like a champ. Spirit Break gonna go into the Gengar, finish it off, take out that Focus Sash, and now the odds are a little bit more in Joe's favor.
Yeah, so able to get the KO on that Gengar with a little bit of an extra punch from Grimmsnarl there. Now King Gambit has to face down both these Pokemon. A Sucker Punch, able to get the KO on Garchomp. Now this is a very risky situation because if Spirit Break does not KO, you risk giving King Gambit a +2 attack boost thanks to that Defiant ability. So we're going to have to see if Grimmsnarl's Spirit Break is enough to KO this King Gambit.
It's going to come down to a close one. Spirit Break coming off of that Goblin Mode is enough to take out the Kingambit, and that is enough to take it out for Joe. So Joe will take this first round here in this top 16 match.
Yeah, very good stuff to Joe there. Also to Scarlet, very back and forth game there. Lots of lots of KOs left and right, and just a lot of switching of the momentum there. That's the thing about these more slower, bulkier teams that Joe is trying to play. You leave yourself susceptible to just getting overwhelmed if you lead too passively. Of course, the Talonflame critical hit, very nice, but also getting the double up into Sylveon was a pretty big thing going into that turn one.
It's kind of interesting to see Talonflame being used so offensively. Like, we're used to it seeing, basically support, just Tailwind kind of stuff. But right off the bat, Terrastalizing, firing off those Brave Birds, and just, kind of taking the recoil damage on the chin, just knowing that as long as, you can get the KOs that you need to get out of it. And I think that Talonflame was able to pick up about 2 KOs for it. So, I mean, that's a pretty good trade, 1 Pokemon for 2. But really, the Garchomp was the all-star there, being able to clean up from the back. I think that was the most impressive part of Joe's team, at least.
Yeah, back in my day, 2014, Talonflame used to be an offensive Pokemon, but now, Gale Wings doesn't work the same, doesn't do quite the same thing it used to do back in the good old days. But, Talonflame's still proving that it can still be quite the offensive threat here.
Right.
But still very much capable of providing some great support with Tailwind, Will-O-Wisp, lots of cool stuff. But the Terra Flying is a cool touch. I was very interested, like you said, in that Garchomp with the Terra Water, a very interesting defensive Terra type there. You do block the ice type attacks. You do now resist those. We've usually seen Terra Steel, Terra Fire, mainly because Garchomp can take advantage of those stabs, and also has access to like Iron Head. Can make good use of Terra Blast. Also does resist the Fairy typing with both of those, but yeah, the water typing, definitely a good touch there to potentially resist some of King Gambit's moves, Talonflame's fire moves, stuff like that. So, but yeah, mainly that sweeping potential with Earthquake, a little bit less, overwhelming without the Terra ground typing, but, Garchomp putting in a ton of work in this matchup. And we'll have to see if Gallade is carrying something like potentially Wide Guard and maybe stick around to a little bit longer to see if it can defend. But here we go. We got Talonflame and Gengar going up against, once again, Grimmsnarl and Sylveon from Joe's side. Yeah, going into this turn, we have of course, the threat of Tailwind. Gengar can also potentially threaten some damage onto both of these Fairy-type Pokemon. And we'll have to see what goes into this turn 1. Gengar did not reveal Sludge Bomb, so maybe these two Fairy-type Pokemon feeling a little bit safer in this position, but still going to have to contest with Tailwind. But Talonflame once again going on the offensive with Brave Bird.
Yeah, right into that Grimmsnarl. Grimmsnarl able to take it pretty well, again, sitting healthily above 50% of its HP. The Reflect is going to go up right afterwards, not quite as quick as Gale Wing. Sludge Bomb is going to go off right into that Grimmsnarl and take it off the field right before it can get things started. It was really able to provide a lot of support last match, but it looks like it won't this time. Hyper Voice is going to go off for Sylveon, activating that Throat Spray, giving it a special attack bonus, but it's not enough to pick up the KOs on either Mon here. So interesting turn 1s here as we see King Gambit coming in for Joe UX9.
Yeah, so Grimmsnarl only able to get off one screen there, and Talonflame once again going on the offensive, not really needing the Tailwind now, as these two are very, very speedy Pokemon. Sylveon still throwing off a Hyper Voice, resisted by both of these Pokemon, but they are kind of frail on the special side, but even the resistances still going to be taking a lot of damage, giving Sylveon the Throat Spray. King Gambit is in an interesting spot here. It does face a potential threat of Talonflame Will-O-Wisping it, or just straight up doing a ton of damage with Flare Blitz. It does threaten a very powerful Sucker Punch into either one of these two Pokemon, or just like general strong attacks. So it's in a very interesting spot here. It'll depend on what these Pokemon have on them, but Gengar is just going to come back and swap in for another.
And looks like we're going to see Kingambit coming out. So Kingambit on both sides of the fields now. One red, one blue. Sucker Punch is going to come off of, I believe that is... one of them. Sucker Punch is going to come off of the Kingambit, but of course that's not going to miss with connected to the Gengar. Tailwind is going to go up from the Talonflame. Hyper Voice firing off of the Sylveon. It's enough to pick up the KO on the Talonflame and get a little bit of chip damage on this Kingambit, but of course that Steel typing allowing it to take that right on the chin.
Yeah, Talonflame doing what it does best right before it has to bite the dust there. But this is still a very interesting position for Scarlet. I see the positioning game that's starting to come out here, but it is going to be Gallade coming out here. So Gallade we saw is a very potent Pokemon in this matchup, has a lot of super effective coverage. Was blessed with a beautiful ability in this generation, Sharpness, which boosts its slicing moves by 50%, and also has a lot of moves that can crit. So, Gallade has a potential to throwing off some very, very potent offense here. Also has a lot of good support moves. Trick Room, Will-O-Wisp, Wide Guard has a lot of cool stuff that Gallade can do. So we're going to see if Gallade is going to potentially go on the offensive here to try and remove that King Gambit threat. But if I'm Scarlet, I'm personally looking at that Sylveon, because as much positioning you want to be doing to maximize your Tailwind turns, you got to keep in mind that Sylveon's Hyper Voices are still going to be chunking all of your team despite the resistances. But now we're going to be seeing the Terrestrialization coming out from Scarlet's side into the Gallade. Let's see what it's going to turn into. It is going to be the Terra Fighting, so maybe Gallade can tend to just go on the offense here.
Nothing but uppercuts coming from this Gallade, and that is definitely a threat if you are Kingambit on Joe UX9 side. But we also see the Terrestrialization coming from Joe's side. It's going to go into Sylveon. Sylveon's going to do it in that Terra Fire type that we've seen being so successful earlier on in this tournament. And it'll be interesting to see how Joe utilizes that going forward here. Of course, we see the Psycho Cut going into Sylveon, and it takes it out in one shot. Joe definitely doesn't want to see that happen. But it looks like the momentum has definitely shifted here. Glade, of course, losing a little bit of its HP there for a Life Orb. Iron Head's going to go into the Kingambit. Not very effective, but has the potential to flinch. Doesn't get that potential. Cowdo Cleave is going to go into the Glade, but of course not nearly as effective now that it is a mono fighting type defensively.
Yeah, so just great turn for Scarlet there, being able to remove the Sylveon. And, of course, the Terra fighting, removing the Psychic typing from that Gallade, making it take a little bit less damage from Kowtow Cleave. And now Scarlet is in a fantastic position here to just start picking up KOs. I mean, Garchomp, as we've seen, has been quite of a nuisance to handle. Both of these Pokemon don't have super effective ways to hit it normally, but, you know, a double up certainly from either of these Pokemon, especially back from a Terra-fighting Sacred Sword, going to be doing a lot of damage here, and it's a critical hit!
Ooh, Garchomp goes down with one Sacred Sword, Terra boosted with that fighting type, Terra type there. Very, very hard match to come back from at this point for Joe. Kowtow Cleave from Kingambit is going to go into a protected Kingambit. And now it looks like it is a Kingambit against the world. Or do we have another Pokemon in the back still? No, I don't think we don't. No, Sucker Punch is going to go off, and it's going to go into the Glade. Not enough to take out the KO. Glade coming in for the Sacred Sword. Of course, with that Terra boost and that 4x weakness should be more than enough to take out the Kingambit, and it does. So this second round going to Scarlet.
Yeah, funny enough, guys, Sacred Sword is one of Gallade's moves that actually doesn't have an increased crit rate. But, you know, Sacred Sword still doing a ton of damage there off of the Terra fighting, just able to remove that Garchomp from the field. But, yeah, very, very good stuff to Scarlet there, getting the... getting the right positioning with that Tailwind, being able to make use of Talonflame, and Gallade ending up being the MVP there, just getting those key KOs.
Right.
Yeah, Gallade, you know, it's a Pokemon people have been sleeping on, but I think now after watching this set, I think it's definitely time to start taking notice.
It's going through a bit of a renaissance, especially when you can Terastallize it and get that boost on your fighting type, especially with that Sacred Sword and the sharpness boost on that as well. I mean, that's a lot of damage output, and you know, hats off to Scarlet in that last match for really putting Glade in the position where it could essentially sweep the rest of the match. And that's exactly what happened there. I mean, you know, one Psycho Cut able to take that Sylveon completely off the equation, take Terastallization out of the equation for Joe. That's hard to come back from.
Yeah, and the cool part about Gallade is that, like, it's not only a much more potent offensive threat now, but it also just has a lot of really good moves it can make use of. But I mean, I guess we'll have to see what popular variant of Gallade ends up being the most used. I mean, I know that a lot of sets have been sort of trying to mix the two, but it looks like from Scarlet's point of view, I think we saw Night Slash as well. So we have Psycho Cut, we have you know, Night Slash both of those moves have higher crit odds, so even if you just get that, you're just blowing something up. And even Sacred Sword, just some consistent damage backed up by the Terra fighting, you can just do so much damage there. So that's the thing also, like with these teams, is that like if those critical hits can be very costly because they just hit through everything, your screens, your damage mitigation, all of that. And you know, Kingambit has been a very, very vital tool for Joe so far in these tournaments. It definitely has been exerting a lot of pressure, but Gallade sticking around is a very big roadblock to that. It's able to withstand those Sucker Punches, the Kowtow Cleaves, and can just straight up one-shot it with the Sacred Sword. So we're going to have to see what this epic Game 3 has in store for us. We're going to see the leads coming out from these two trainers, and let's see.
Love a Game 3.
Yeah, let's see how this shakes up. So we're going to see now what they're going to lead with. We're going to go Talonflame and Gengar. And from Joe's side, we got Grimmsnarl and Garchomp leading off this time.
Yeah, a little bit different than we've seen in the past, mostly leading off with that Grimmsnarl Sylveon lead. But now putting that offensive pressure out there with Garchomp, a really dominant force in that first game. I think this is a good pivot for Joe.
Yeah, I think this is definitely good to get Garchomp on the field early to start dealing some damage. Grimmsnarl has been a pretty good lead, but it has shown to be quite volatile against Pokemon like Gengar, and Talonflame, as we saw that double up, was just enough to knock it out straight away. Granted, Reflect did go up last time, not Light Screen, so potentially blocking some more of the super effective damage might be in Joe's best interest right now, but we're going to see the first one, the turn 1 Terastallization come out from Joe's side.
And it's going to go right into that Garchomp. Again, turning this Landshark into one of the ocean once again. Earthquake's still able to fire off with that stab boost, but now a little bit protected defensively. Light Screen is going to add a little bit more bulk to the mix here, coming off the Grimmsnarl. Will-O-Wisp firing off of this Talonflame, and it's going to connect with the Garchomp, which could be absolutely critical here to its damage output. Of course, Garchomp takes that burn, and then Sludge Bomb going into the Grimmsnarl, able to still hang on there with less than 50% of its health, but just barely. A Rock Slide's going to come off of this Garchomp going into the Talonflame, not enough to take out the Talonflame. Those burn reductions really coming in critical.
Yeah, Talonflame showing once again another dimension to its skill set, the ability to Will-O-Wisp and mitigate damage. Just recognizing here that Tailwind probably not immediately applicable since Gengar outspeeds both of these Pokemon. Still getting a huge chunk of damage off there with Sludge Bomb, and now Garchomp is going to be basically its damage going to be stunted for the rest of the game. As you can see, even Rock Slide, a ×4 super effective move, not being able to take out Talonflame, allowing it to just stay on the field. Not even needing Gale Wings at this point, because it's still the fastest thing on the field, and unless this Grimmsnarl has some way to mitigate speed like Thunder Wave, it's going to stay that way and potentially get some last-ditch damage, or potentially get some Tailwind up to support what is likely going to be the Gallade, or maybe one of Scarlet's other Pokemon, the heavy hitters in the back, maybe even a Kingambit. But here comes Tailwind and another screen.
Yeah, with the Deflect goes up for Grimmsnarl, Tailwind going off for the Talonflame, Sludge Bomb firing into that Grimmsnarl will be enough to take it out from that Gengar. And now it is all up to the Garchomp here for this turn. Earthquake firing off of them, only going to be able to hit the Gengar. And it should be enough to see. Yep, it is enough for the KO. Had to check there for a second. Those damage reductions do take a lot. But yeah, so Joe able to at least trade a 1-for-1 here, despite the burn stacked against him.
Yeah, a good 1-for-1 trade, though I do like Scarlet's position a little bit more after this, because now you do have the burned Garchomp on the other side, just so not dealing a crazy amount of damage. Talonflame's still sticking around too, so I mean, Joe still has to be very careful about bringing in these physical attackers, but sort of the double-edged sword of Talonflame sticking around, it's kind of done a lot of its job already. It's set Tailwind, it's gotten a Will-O-Wisp on the Garchomp, it's still good for some damage, going to probably be KOing itself with the recoil, but Sylveon switching back out is about as quickly as it just came in.
A little bit of a pump fake there as we see Kingambit replacing it. Protect going off on the Garchomp, a much more defensive play here for Joe. We see the Brave Bird firing off the Talonflame into that Kingambit. It will take it very well. And of course, take a little bit of recoil damage with it as well. The Iron Head also going into Kingambit, takes that very well. And a very defensive play here by Joe.
Yeah, I really like that play and that switch out. Sylveon sort of acting as a little bit of a bait just to get Kingambit in safely. Meanwhile, Garchomp can just do a little bit more damage there. But Talonflame, interestingly, still remaining on the field because it was not able to take itself out there with recoil. As another Brave Bird going to get fired off, this time into Garchomp.
Garchomp still able to take it and stay in this match. Recoil damage going off on Talonflame is enough to take it out, so Talonflame no longer a problem. We see Kingambit going for a low kick into its opposing Kingambit. Super effective, but it's able to hold on there by 21 HP. You can see the shock on Joe's face and the Defiant boost, boosting it as well. Now, Joe's Kingambit is in a critical spot, and I believe that's a weakness policy as well. Earthquake is going to fire off and take out the rest of that Kingambit, though, before it can get the chance to attack, and leaving only a sliver of damage on the opposing Kingambit. Definitely an exciting turn for Joe, but it's unfortunate not to be able to get that Kingambit in a position where it can utilize all those buffs.
Yeah, really unfortunate with Garchomp sometimes is that, sometimes you got an Earthquake, and sometimes it's the best way to hit the opponent's Pokemon, and, sometimes that involves damaging your own team, and after a low kick there, taking Kingambit all the way down to basically that low amount of HP to the point where not even a burn Garchomp able to just knock it out there. So now Scarlet has the ability to bring in that Gallade, and as we've seen, Gallade definitely able to do some work here. It still has the option to Terrastallize available to it. So yeah, I mean, Joe just staring down on the back foot here. Sylveon can still potentially do a lot of work, still doing a ton of damage with those Hyper Voices, but I believe Tailwind is still in play for one more turn as Psycho Cut comes out, KOing the Garchomp, and we'll have to see if Sylveon is able to live the turn. Joe potentially putting his hands together, potentially praying to see if Sylveon can make it through.
See if we can get this Hyper Voice off for Sylveon. Iron Head's going to go into Kingambit, and it lives, so Sylveon's able to do it. It's all about the flinch, no flinch, and okay, so Glade is now down. The Kingambit, though, we know is a bit faster than this Sylveon, so it's going to be up to see. And the Tailwind actually now is going out, so that actually will probably put the things back in Joe's favor. So now it is a chance for this Sylveon to actually take out this Kingambit, and Joe can actually win this match in a 1v1 matchup.
Yeah, we'll have to see if Sylveon, it is naturally faster. Not faster
Oh,
than Kingambit, and Kingambit's going to take the KO, and that will be the set for Scarlet, taking an absolute nail-biter.
Wow, what a match there. A complete game 3, back and forth with Scarlet and Violet, coming down to the last Pokemon. Steel type opposing a Fairy type. What a match. Oh, man. That was intense.
That was an insane match. You know, Tailwind turns. I think Joe is relying on a little bit more luck than originally meets the eye there. Once again, hoping Sylveon can first of all, take an Iron Head. Second of all, does not flinch. And then also potentially praying for a critical hit, maybe acknowledging that Sylveon wouldn't be faster than Kingambit on that final turn. Kingambit is rather slow, so there was a decent possibility that Sylveon could have been faster, but, you know, these Sylveons do tend to bulk themselves out a little bit more. You know, Sylveon's speed isn't that high to begin with.
It also makes me wonder if this Kingambit was Scarf, because I don't know if we saw it use anything other than Iron Head. And maybe if it's a Choice Scarf that puts it in a strange speed tier there. I mean, Kingambit's got like a base 50 speed. It's pretty slow.
Yeah.
And so it surprises me that it was able to outspeed that Sylveon. But and at first I thought it was just the Tailwind buffs going there. But of course, Tailwind dying that last turn, I thought, well, as long as Joe can take that little bit of HP that's left on there out of it, he's got this. But I don't know. That mix up there makes me lean towards it being Scarfed.
Yeah, I think we also did see Low Kick come out on the.
Oh, that's true. That's true. That's true. Yeah.
On the Kingambit Ditto there that unfortunately put it in KO range of that Garchomp's Earthquake. But yeah, Kingambit, you know, it's a very bulky Pokemon. It's able to take a lot of hits, especially if you put something like the Salt Vest on it. Even surviving long enough, one of those Choice Spec Sylveon Hyper Voices, just able to take so much damage. And yeah, maybe there's some speed investment in this Kingambit that can push it over the edge against these certain kind of matchups. But yeah, really good set. Yeah, I'm excited to see what the rest of this tournament has in store for us.
Yeah, that'll do it for the top 16. Up next, we've got the top 8 coming. So stick around. It'll be me and Savage Patch Kid doing the commentary. So stick around. We got plenty more coming your way when the Wide League returns.